Howdy, all. Professor Parks, PhD here. I make content on astronomy, mental health, and science skepticism, not necessarily in that order. And as I'm finding to be more and more the case, I make videos in the middle of the night because I can't sleep. Howdy, Ruif. So yeah, here am I. Here is what I look like in the middle of the night when I can't sleep. This episode is brought to you by Buffalo Bill's Body Lotion, established 1991. It puts the lotion on its skin, or you really start looking old. So there you go. So yeah, let me put up my greasy hair and give you a little bit of an introduction of what this is about. This is, I think, going to be, I don't know what this is actually. So one of the people that I have met recently in this YouTube journey of mine. Oh, I should say, howdy, Rufif. I hope you're doing well. I hope your family's doing well, and I think your dogs are probably. Last time really chatted with you, you had just bought some new puppies or something of that nature. Howdy, Cygnus. Anyway, so man, apologies for the cold sore. It's hideous. Anyway, all right, any of that. So in my recent journeys, one of the people who's been following my channel, I don't know if he's a subscriber or what have you, is Peter Markley, who is a flat Earth debunker. I think he's recently on the scene. The only exposure that I've had with him in terms of seeing his content is a debate that he did with Toon with Space Audits, Alan, and someone I didn't recognize. And yeah, that was about as much of a cluster hug as you would expect from a flat Earth debate at this point. But Peter and I mostly communicate through my comment section. He is a young Earth creationist. He is has positive feelings towards Will Duffy. I think anyone who has been following me lately understands clearly my feelings on Will Duffy in that matter, and in fact, young Earth creationism as a whole. And today I got a notification that he had reached out. And also, I didn't realize this, Peter. You have more subs than me. Gosh darn it. Here, I'll add another one. Just in case you're sub to me. But not by much. We're actually pretty close together in terms of number of subs. You're at, I think, 196 at this, or 896 at this point. So Peter tagged me in a post advertising this video and asked me to take a look at it and provide my thoughts. I believe, how did he phrase it? So I can get this right. I would humbly request the attention of Wah on this video of mine, premiered today at 3:30 Eastern. That was yesterday. I feel you may sympathize with a few things I say here, so I'm very interested in your point of view. Yada yada. So that's what I'm going to do. I decided, hey, I can't sleep. I really haven't watched really much of Peter's content. So yeah, here we are. I very much would like to do this drinking coffee, but yeah, I realized that I can't sleep. So drinking coffee would kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Be counterproductive. What do I want to do here? But I am also very tired. So please forgive me if I get a little loopy, like trying to figure out how to actually do that. All right. Morning, Nimrod. Get rid of Trump. A lot of problems could be solved. I have looked at, so in all transparency, because, well, first off, I'm a fan of the Daily Show. I'm a fan of cat videos, and I am a fan of listening to ASMR as done by attractive women. So there you go. That's a little bit of a glimpse into my life. So I looked a little bit. I watched the first maybe minute or so of this video, and yes, Trump does appear within this video. But outside of that, I don't know really what's coming. So this is my hot take, as it were. So you're getting this live and literally live and unfiltered. Cygnus, it gets heavy as fuck. Cygnus, have you seen this? Because if it gets heavy as fuck, I might have to leave the kitties up here. I might not. I can't go full screen if it's going to get. Okay. All right. We in Europe can't believe what Trump does. Resident Europeans are not alone in that. I know of a number of us Americans who can't believe what Trump is doing either. And I don't exactly know, and it's almost a daily conversation that I have either with myself or friends of mine as to what are we doing? What can we do? It is not to get too political. Again, I want to get into this video, but I have never, I know this is cliche. I am to the point that I am now saying I've never seen this country like the way it is today. You know, I saw a video of Bush W. Can't fool me once, or fool me once, shame on you. Can't fool me twice. And I chuckled at it. And I was like, oh, I remember those halcyon days when Republicans were just dumb and almost comically so. I mean, they were still doing some evil shit, but at least it was somewhat funny. It ain't funny anymore. And it's not going to get any funnier in the next 4 years, or God forbid, beyond that. Because of, again, anyway, enough of that. Like I said, I want to get into this video. Yeah, I think, no, it's fool me once. He stumbles around a bit and he says, oh, I just had it. You can't fool me again. Something like that. Yeah. Anyway. All right. So first off, okay. It's nice seeing you, Peter. I've never seen you in real life. So I think when I watched that debate, you were on a small screen. So I'm digging the black-white aesthetic. I see what you did there with the globe in the background and your Bible over here. I don't know what that figure is, but let's get started. Let me know how the volume is.
In the last 10 years, the changing mood of our country has brought me a lot of thoughts and feelings, not all of which seemed entirely productive to share in public. It just wasn't helping anyone. For a minute, I even started to give up on participating at all in the bigger political conversation, which was fine. My world shrank a little. I got on with my life. I worked on my graphic novel, fell in love, got married. Life was good.
So I can definitely relate to this in the sense that, yeah, I think actually around the time of George W., I basically started tuning out on politics because I didn't like where things were going. I didn't like where things were headed. And like now, I felt a sense of powerlessness. I didn't know exactly what I could contribute to the situation that was positive in any way. I didn't know I didn't know what kind of steps I should take. Two, I didn't know if I had the energy to do it. And so for my own mental health, I took a step back. I basically disengaged from any kind of public discourse. I left Facebook, I left social media, whatever little social media presence I had at the time. I just decided, screw it. I got better things to worry about. So I can definitely relate to this idea of you look at the world and it sucks and you don't know what to do about it. So instead of potentially making the situation worse, you just simply disengage.
I may have a right
Oh, and congrats on getting married. And I didn't know you had a graphic novel. So I am very curious about that.
to free speech, but I don't have a right to attention. Meanwhile, the world became a conflagration of insanity.
You will not replace us!
Every time I thought the din was reaching a crescendo, the next stroke was somehow louder and worse.
This I can also relate to. I thought I had, during Trump's first presidency, it did plateau. Like it was the first 100 days were 100 years. It felt like, but it ultimately plateaued. I realized that his administration was effectively inept. That for whatever reason, either there were adults in the room, or he just wasn't politically he and his servants, supplicants, were not politically savvy enough. But I realized that he wasn't doing or wasn't capable. Sorry, I keep wanting to get that view out of there. He wasn't really capable or wasn't doing any sort of, in my opinion, permanent harm. He wasn't changing the very culture or very character of politics, at least not to a large extent or a large degree. Now, that's not the case anymore for me. I think that he is doing irreparable harm, at the very least, to how political speech, how political conversations, discord, how that is going to be done from now on. And it's going to be a net negative, in that it's going to be a lot more confrontational. It's going to be a lot more based on who has the stronger charisma rather than who has a stronger position. And so, yeah, Trump is responsible for that. In terms of democracy, a lot of people will say that democracy in the United States is dying or even dead, that Trump is a fascist, that he's an authoritarian, or that he's an autocrat. Does he have dreams of being an autocrat? That I think is indisputable. Is he an autocrat? Is he fascist? Are we living in a fascist? I don't know. I do know that we are moving in a direction where rights are being diminished. People who are marginalized are being even more marginalized, to the point of significant harm. I mean, if you had asked me a year ago, or told me a year ago, that my country would be deporting people, regardless of whom they were or what they did, we're deporting people to fucking El Salvador to be held in a maximum security prison, I don't even believe that now. That is so far beyond the pale to me that I don't even know how to characterize that anymore. I don't know. I'm so exhausted in terms of how outraged I'm supposed to be. I don't know where it falls on the scale anymore. So, yes, this idea of it just keep getting worse and worse and worse, I can definitely relate to that as well.
And now, because of my flat earth debunking, I am starting to get a bit of attention. But I've grown a little less sure what to do with it. What could I possibly contribute to this mess that would have a net positive effect, but with a tolerable personal cost to me and my remaining relationships?
I asked myself that same question. Um, not that I'm getting a lot of attention lately or more attention now than I did in the past or what have you, but I mean, obviously, when I poke the bear of Will Duffy, I have gotten a little bit more attention, and that attention has not always been positive. So, and also because of the subject matter itself, I have been fairly triggered, and I worry that if I continue down that road blindly, then it's going to have a very much adverse effect to my mental health. And not only that, it's going to have an adverse effect to the conversation as a whole, which I certainly don't want to do. I do not want to make the situation any worse than I already feel that it is through my own actions. So, again, I can relate to this.
If I'm already walking a tightrope, how can I intervene in a conflict? A few weeks ago, my wife and I were seeing current events, and our discussion turns towards strategy and activism, the very thing that I was resigned against. And as I began to face it, the words tumbled out of me. There's a whole graveyard here. That gave me an idea. Activism doesn't have to mean arguments or confrontation. This video is not more of that. But I realize the other side of outrage is tenderness toward things worth being outraged over.
Okay. Yeah, I like where the theme of where this is going. I have a little bit of trepidation as to where it's going, but yes, I have said in the past, and something that I have not felt that I've lived up to recently, is that when it comes to contentious debates, conversations, what have you, and of course, here comes Luna. Say hi, Luna. Or not. She also likes the cat videos. When it comes to these sorts of contentious things, I think the toxicity level is far too high. And I think I put out a video a long time ago that basically asked for the flat earth conversation, the toxicity in the flat earth conversation to be lowered on both sides of that conversation. I mean, of late, I feel that I've been more toxic. Well, I've been toxic because of the fact that because of young earth creationism being cloaking itself in science and its relationship, or my personal experience with young earth creationists and hateful evangelical Christians. So yeah, in general, I would want my content to me, if I can be a hippie for a second, I mean, I'm getting the hair again, to be more about love than it is about hate, to be more about trying to find common ground, trying to understand each other rather than ripping each other apart through insults or outrage.
And maybe if I kept this personal to me, while also specific to the grief that I might just have in common with some of the aggressors in this situation, that might be a safe and helpful way for me to use whatever amount of attention I might have. So I hope it's clear. My choice to express this is not because I think I have any right to do so, next to the much greater grief and a danger felt right now by certain others.
I'm going to push back a little bit on that. Obviously, if you're making this content, and I think this applies to anyone making content, then you do feel that you have the right to do it, that you do feel a motivation that your opinion should be heard, or at least should be heard. Maybe not accepted, maybe not championed, but at least heard. And I have no problem with that. I think that one of the very sharp double-edged swords of the internet is its ability to allow anyone to have a voice, to allow anyone to have a platform. I believe in a plurality of voices. I believe in a plurality of thought. However, that means that some of that thought is going to not be things that I like, not just things that I find disagreeable, but things that I find repugnant. But I am an advocate for free speech so long as that speech does no harm. I do not believe that rights are absolutist in any stretch. But so, yeah, I'm going to push back and say you are doing this because you feel that you have the right to say that, and that's okay.
This is just the best non-passive option available to me that I can find.
Sure. Okay, we're getting a little Blair Witchy here. I see snot. I'm going to be very disappointed. Kids! Oh, it's a kitty! Oh, look at the kitty!
It's in Jesus Christ's name that we pray.
Yeah, that was
Let's stand together and sing.
Sorry, I think that's my internet being fuzzy.
I was number 4 out of 5 children in a Christian homeschooling family. While my mom was pregnant with me, she was volunteering as the vice president of our county's chapter of the Right to Life organization. There's a day that the pro-life movement calls Sanctity of Human Life Sunday, based on the anniversary of the Roe v. Wade Supreme Court decision. In her 9th month, on that day, my mom was going to church, had just arrived, and was still in the parking lot when her water broke. So she and my family got back in the car and drove to the hospital instead. I was subsequently born on Sanctity of Life Sunday.
Movie?
While growing up,
I was born on another sanctified day, the day that Leonard Nimoy was born.
I had a good, loving family. There was nothing I was aware of lacking that I really wanted. And I had no reason to wonder if that could be partly because our ancestors had taken anything from someone else. Our church had an American flag at the back wall of the stage, and at the time, we really didn't think that was weird. We watched VeggieTales.
Oh no, what we gonna do? The king likes Daniel more than me and you.
God made you special, and he loves you very much.
We learned the religious roots of our nation, and we took pride in being a melting pot.
I wondered all day what it said about her. Would you read it to me?
Here at our sea-washed sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. Keep ancient lands your storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. Give me your tar, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore.
Couple things. So what I'm hearing so far is that you were not aware that white privilege existed. You were not aware of class privilege. Seems to me that you were grew up in a affluent enough. I'd probably, by just that brief clip, I would say probably somewhere in the solid middle class. And you know, you're white, dude. It's just how it is. So from my understanding, that from what you're saying here is that you were unaware of those privileges when you were growing up. Same here. My family was objectively on the lower side of middle class, but we certainly weren't poor by any stretch. We did live in some once my father left the military, my home in Tampa, Florida was, shall we say, not in the greatest of neighborhoods. I won't get into that, but yeah, I didn't think that, I certainly didn't understand that because I was white, there were certain things that were not stacked against me. They weren't stacked for me per se. They weren't, but they were not stacked against me in the sense that I didn't have to worry about driving while white. I didn't have to worry about if I got into trouble in a legal point of view, whether or not my case would be actually objectively tried on the facts as opposed to anything else. So, okay. All right. Fair. I think that is I think for folks like us who grew up in that sort of who grew up in that sort of thing, I think that's fairly common. And it is notable that we recognize that these things exist now. And it is even more notable if we can pass on that knowledge to the next generation so that folks like the next generation of folks like us understand at a much earlier age just what the reality of things are. The other thing I want to say is I think from an objective standpoint, VeggieTales freaks me the fuck out. Not really because of what's said per se, but the voice acting and the animation style freak me the fuck out. Just saying. Also, the OA, snooze fest. Fucking boring as shit. Could not get through it. But that narration of the plaque, that was good times.
Send these, the homeless, tempest tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door.
I can remember as a child actually feeling lucky that I was born here instead of anywhere else in the world. We started the world trend to...
That I don't think is... I think if you have any knowledge of the current state of the world, I don't think we are of the same generation, but yeah, I don't think that's a groundbreaking thing to say. I am glad that I was born in the United States rather than, say, the Democratic Republic of Congo or Haiti or Iran or any other places or fuck Gaza, any of the other places that are currently seeing a systemic or have seen systemic strife and systemic privity. Systemic shititude. We'll go with that word.
For democracy, we helped save the world from Nazis. We made a giant leap of science to silence aggression in the Pacific with an apocalyptic smackdown, which I had no concept of being possibly avoidable, much less a war crime. We led the...
Okay, I'm a little bit confused on your messaging there. Let me replay that so I'm not missing any context or anything there.
Golden door.
I can remember as a child actually feeling lucky that I was born here instead of anywhere else in the world. We started the world trend toward democracy. We helped save the world from Nazis. We made a giant leap of science to silence aggression in the Pacific with an apocalyptic smackdown, which I had no concept of being possibly avoidable, much less a war crime. We led the world in...
So what I'm confused about is your use of the phrase apocalyptic smackdown, and then your implication that it was a war crime. Make no mistake, the bombing of Nagasaki or Hiroshima, you can make the case that saved lives. You can make that argument. However, what you cannot say is that the events themselves weren't horrific. I'm not going to call them war crimes because, honestly, the term war crime is kind of like civil war. It is a contradiction in terms, in the sense of, to me, it's a war, therefore it is by definition a crime. If we have gone to that point that we feel that we can only settle our differences by killing each other, something has gone terribly, terribly wrong. So just making a comparison, that calling the atomic bomb drops as a smackdown greatly diminishes, I think, the depth of the amount of loss of life and the horrific nature of both the event and the aftermath of that event. So, but I think there's a but coming here. In terms of the other things that you said, that we led we led the movement in democracy, and that we, basically save the world, or help save the world from a certain mustachioed dude who really made shitty paintings. I mean, yes, but I will also say that I grew up Republican. I grew up in a fairly conservative household, and I went even further. I was even more to the right than my parents were, to the point that I actually kind of scared my mother at some point, because I held strongly to the belief that if you did not work, you starved. I did not believe in a social network or a social safety net run by the government in any form whatsoever. I had no empathy for anyone who didn't pull their own fucking weight, in my view of things. And so I'm used to this America's great chest thumping thing, and always pointing back to World War II. And yeah, we did our part, or we did a part in ending the Nazi threat. But you know who actually won that war? The Brits. Because if the British had not held out for as long as they did, because it took us a fucking ridiculous long time to actually get involved in that war, if the Brits had fallen and Europe had achieved some sort of relative peace, in that Hitler had managed to kill or suppress any sort of opposition, then there wouldn't have been a situation for America to save. So if you want to pin a win of the World War II on any particular nation, that has to be Great Britain. I don't see any sort of argument for anyone else. The admiration I have for what they went through, the endurance they had for what they felt or what they endured, or the endurance they had from constant shelling, constant years of warfare before we got into the mix, and then to be able to see the war through to the end, is fucking incredible. So I'm to the point that I'm kind of done with the like rah, we are awesome in World War II, and we, kicked the shit out of the Nazis and all that kind of good stuff. Because we tend to forget about, Korea, and we certainly seem to forget or whitewash Vietnam to a great extent. So I find America's greatness, or those who claim that America is great, do so with some very large blinders on.
Into the space age.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
And my wonderful, amazing grandpa not only lived to see most of that, but during World War II, he served as an army mechanic at Camp Irwin, now called Fort Irwin. We felt that America was founded on the Bible, and the love of that freedom was in our blood.
That's where we diverge. So like you, my grandfather served in World War II. My grandmother also served in World War II as a mechanic. To measure military dicks, my father served 2 tours in Vietnam. My uncle on my mother's side served a tour in Vietnam. The youngest uncle on my mother's side served in Desert Storm. My brother attempted to get into the military, but because of medical reasons, he was discharged. I attempted to get into to the military, but I wasn't even considered because of certain medical reasons. So yeah, did I miss anybody? I think that was it. So yeah, I have a lot of military in my background. I have tremendous respect for the military. I don't agree, which might seem weird because of my rather strong views about war itself, but the people who actively give their lives or put their lives on the line for this country are people to be held in extremely high regard. And that's all. I mean, that's the very least. Regardless of the policies of things, of what the military is doing, what the military has done, what it is, who it lets in, who it doesn't anymore. The sheer idea that if you join the military, the principal mandate is for you to lay down your life for your fellow citizens. That's your primary job. You can be a corpsman, you can be a radio tech, you could be a fire pilot, you can be an infantryman. It doesn't matter who you are. Your number one job, your basic job, is to put your life on the line for others. And I can think of very few motivations that are more honorable and heroic than that. So kudos to anyone in the military. Big fan of the military, or the principle therein of the people who serve. Anyway, here is where our commonalities diverge. I was not raised with the Bible, so I was raised on patriotic, kind of, hoorah, America! America's awesome. I was raised on all that, but there was no Christianity tied to it. The lore of my family is that we went to church when I was younger. I think it was non-denominational. Mom never really said, but apparently us kids, my half brother and I, bitched too much, and my mother was like, "Fuck it, we're not going to do this," because apparently the church in Corpus Christi, Texas, wasn't air conditioned for reasons that are beyond my comprehension. So we just didn't go. And I find out later that I have inherited a sizable amount of Buddhas from my father, who has passed on. I have one right here. Here's one of them. I have a row of them over there. I've got a couple up there. I have a lot of Buddhas, particularly for someone who is white and has never had any sort of alignment to Eastern ideologies. The reason why I do is because another family sort of legend is that when my father was in Vietnam, the pastor, I think he was referred to as the pastor. There's another term for it. Anyway, I'll get to why that's important in a sec. The dude who did Sunday services kept bugging my dad, "Hey, we don't see you there. What's going on?" And my dad was like, "You know what? Fuck this. I've tried to explain to him I'm not my scene." So he decided that to tell the dude he was a Buddhist. And he apparently started collecting Buddhists to support that idea. What I found out later in life, which is one of the many regrets I have about the relationship I had with my father, is that this is his dog tag. This is one of his dog tags from Nam, which I carry around on my keychain. And lo and behold, what it lists as his religious affiliation is Catholic. When he passed, I inherited, is it over here? No, it's over there. I inherited his Bible, his Catholic Bible. Had no fucking idea he was Catholic at all. But knowing my mother, I think I know why that was the case. But ultimately, my point here is that this is where our stories diverge, is that I was not raised in a religious home setting of any real sort. We were allowed to live and let live, essentially. Believe what you want. I'm sure that my mother and father both believed in God to one extent or another. Like I said, I would really have loved to have, particularly later in life when I converted to Catholicism, would have learned to have known this. My brother converted first, and he still didn't say anything about it. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. So I'm starting to ramble now, so let's get back to it. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. I want to do that.
Despite that, I always knew that vision of America was on the decline, and maybe already doomed. Some type of invisible end was approaching, just like it was for my grandpa, like it does.
I want to replay this so that I have full context. I may allow this to play for a few minutes. The hell with YouTube and all that, because I want to be able to. I don't want to misrepresent or misunderstand what Peter is saying here.
We led the world into the space age.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Thanks, Nimrod.
And my wonderful, amazing grandpa not only lived to see most of that, but during World War II, he served as an army mechanic at Camp Irwin, now called Fort Irwin. We felt that America was founded on the Bible, and the love of that freedom was in our blood. Despite that, I always knew that vision of America was on the decline, and maybe already doomed. Some type of invisible end was approaching, just like it was for my grandpa, like it does sooner or later for everyone's grandpa. Only from a very young age, I thought America already had a terminal diagnosis. I began my morning a long, long time ago.
Okay. So I'm trying not to get ahead of this. But certain flags are being raised by when you say that, how did you put it? Your vision of America was dying. I mean, yeah, I think, and yes, that is true for everyone. And yes, I am actually, I will say, kudos on the production value. You certainly have outdone me in that regards. I would not have the skill or patience to make a video as well produced as this one. But you're talking about, again, from what I'm hearing so far, I'm trying not to prejudge. What I'm hearing so far is you're talking about a sort of a disillusionment that we have this idea of what our country is and what our position in that country is at an early age. And then as we grow and we are exposed to new ideas and hopefully a larger section or cross section of the world, so that we can open our eyes to more of the reality of the world than what is taught to us when we are children. when that happens, I think disillusionment in one way or another is going to happen. I think that is a natural sort of reaction to have, because, you know, when you hold on to something, and particularly if that something is reinforced by your parents or by your family, in my case, that America was great was the thing that was reinforced, that everything America did was right, that we stood for, you know, peace, love, freedom, all that sort of good stuff. Not so much God, but, you know, everything else that I'm hearing in this video, definitely believed in that. You know, as I said, I was really neoconservative when I was in high school. When I got to college, yeah, that was, to needless to say, is a transformative experience. If people were to come to me and say, hey, why is going to college important? The thing that I would say is not so much the schooling, as depending on what college you go to, that you encounter a much larger cross section of the population at that time than you ever will in your life, except for those people who, you know, are missionaries or go into diplomacy or things of that nature. The vast majority of people and their life story, I would put real money down that the largest cross section of life that they personally experienced happened during their collegiate years. And that is vital, because that was transformative to me, because I started to understand things like privilege. I started to understand that my country was not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. And I started to really question things that I have been told as, if you can pardon the expression, gospel before then. And yeah, it was hard. There were a lot of, you know, for me, what was most, that got me the most was actually not slavery. It was our treatment of Native Americans, particularly the Trail of Tears. Mainly, I learned about the Trail of Tears because I went to high school in Florida. And the things that we did to the Native Americans in this country also excused as necessary for God. The whole manifest destiny thing, if you look into that, there's a lot of God in the foundations of that. And so, yeah, I began to become very disillusioned with my country and with my way of life, or with what I thought I was getting into. I have since felt something similar, and possibly even more drastic, in the most recent days, in the sense that if I were to be hyperbolic, or if I were to be hyperbolic, extremist, or whatever, is that I believe that the America that I loved in the past, even you know, say a decade ago, in my adult years, is gone, and it's not coming back. And I have to deal with that. I have to mourn, as I think you're getting into now. I have to mourn the death of the country that I believed I lived in prior. Now, whether I was wrong about the character of my country prior to that, very well could be. The things that I'm seeing now, is this the true face of the United States coming to be, you know, if the mask is finally coming off, and shit's getting real, shit's getting truthful, so that the things that were there previously were hidden were being unmasked, or whether or not we have truly taken a turn towards our darker impulses, then I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I can say that yes, during this age, I am also suffering. I would say that I'm also going through a mourning period over the death of my country.
And pretty soon afterwards, started taking off my rose-colored glasses. I found out the America I loved wasn't the America that everyone lived in.
There are literally two Americas.
Maybe that's why I wasn't carried along when things took an ugly turn. Someone had a vision of America that they didn't want to let die. And in their angry fervor, they were smashing things. For some, the idea was, we're saving unborn babies from being murdered. So it wasn't a tantrum, it was heroism, with victims and bad guys supposedly so evil that all countermeasures were justified, even supporting or excusing other evil. And not just a little bit, but a rising flood of other evil, causing the name of God to be endlessly reviled. This was not a calculated cost for overall progress toward goodness. This was a shift toward a reductionist binary value system that was intentionally blind toward the cost. In fact, it's
trying to understand, because this isn't again, I'm glad I didn't prejudge. This was not exactly the direction I thought you were going with this. Let's be clear, though. The anti-choice movement did not start with MAGA. I noticed the dude had a red hat. I'm assuming that's an allusion to MAGA. Anti-choice has been around forever. My entire life. I think it's been around pretty much since Roe. And oddly enough, I was raised. My mother went politically nuts at the end of her life. Apparently, that's what old people do. God, I hope I don't. That doesn't happen to me. To the point that I think she might actually like Trump. I don't know. It would be weird. But anyway, when I was in my formative years, my mother would rail against the anti-choice movement because she remembered an era prior to Roe where friends of hers had to stick coat hangers, metal coat hangers, up their hoo-has in order to resolve problems. Say what you will about the motivation behind why anyone would end a pregnancy. But the policies of the United States at that point were pushing women to look at that as a viable fucking option. To me, that is the greater evil. That is the sanctity of life, the sanctity of the mother's life. That is what needs to be cherished. The unborn child, again, what I have difficulty with is that, again, I am pro-life. I don't believe in the killing of anything, really. Would not, if I became pregnant, I wouldn't terminate it. One, because I really would kind of like to see what would pop out. Although I definitely would get a C-section because I don't want anything that large going through either of the two holes down there. So there would be that, but also because of my principle. But as I've said many times, this is not my business. This is not my body. So therefore, I am in no position to judge these people. I am certainly in no position to condemn them as criminals for participating in that act. So that's how I was raised. So I was raised my mother was vehemently pro-choice, or vehemently pro-choice. She was vehemently pro-women. She was vehemently pro-civil rights. She was not, I don't know if it's still around, the National Organization of Women, I guess now. She wouldn't, she refused to be a part of that organization because in her mind, it didn't go far enough. She believed that there was such a disparity between the genders that she could not endorse any kind of half measure. You either fight that kind of oppression, or sorry about that, or you sit on the sidelines. So, yeah. But getting back to what this is, what you're saying here is, and again, maybe I'm misunderstanding or seeing it through my own lens, but you're saying that in order to fight the good fight for anti-choice, you had to adopt evils in order to get that done. In your image, you have, I guess, a whole bunch of woke images. I don't know what these are. So you've got, I guess, women's rights. You've got LGBTQ, white paintbrush. I don't know what the Simon Says is here. Is that, what is that, Palestine? I don't even know what that is, what that flag is, because I'm American. We don't do good with geography. So I don't know. I'm confused as to what you mean by the evils that you are allowing to grow when you're talking about this. Something is percolating in my mind, and I really, really hope that you are not going in that direction, because if you are, my tone will shift.
Were justified, even supporting or excusing other evil. And not just a little bit, but a rising flood of other evil, causing the name of God to be endlessly reviled. This was not a calculated cost for overall progress toward goodness. This was a shift toward a reductionist binary value system that was intentionally blind toward the cost. In fact, it's
also, not for nothing, but you seem to be approaching this from a cost-benefit analysis, which is pretty cold, if I am to be upfront. We were talking about moral issues. We're talking about the sanctity of life. This really shouldn't be a cost-benefit analysis. This should be what is right. What can I do? And I know that is still important. You started this video by talking about not wanting to. You want to contribute positively to a problem that you see within our society. And so when you have that sort of mindset, yeah, there is a certain cost-benefit sort of analysis that needs to run through your head, but you are stressing it to a point that it's raising something of a flag for me. And you talk about God being reviled. Now, again, I don't know exactly what you mean by that. I would agree with it, but probably not in the way that you mean, because the things that I am seeing that are causing God's name to be reviled are evangelical Christians and how they go about evangelizing. That is what I see as the proximate cause for the anti-Christian sentiment in this country, or that the God is evil sentiment in this country, is evangelicals and nothing else. So I agree with you in the sense that, yeah, through all of this discussion of women's rights, of abortion, of gay trans rights, yes, during this conversation, the image of God and the Word of God has been tarnished and is reviled by certain sections of the population. I am not okay with that, but I don't know what to do about that. And I think I've been honest about that in terms of, I know I've been called, as a Christian, I am called to evangelize. I am called to bring forth the kingdom of heaven on earth. But I don't know how to do that without continuing this tradition that evangelicals have of ostracizing, of judging, of marginalizing anyone that does not conform, not only just to Christianity, but their specific brand of Christianity. So yeah.
It started to seem like this was never about unborn children at all.
Agreed. It never was.
Maybe there are a few pro-life women out there for whom this is about soothing a deep subconscious guilt over an abortion in their own past.
Olivia Gans.
Whew. Yeah. Yeah. Not your place to say, buddy. A woman's right, or why a woman why anyone has the views that they have. Why a person who can give birth to children, why they have decided to either support or not support the body autonomy, that is a deeply personal reason for them. And that is not for us to speculate on, because speculation very much tends to, and fucking definitely sounds like, judgment. So yeah, the ice is getting real thin.
Turner is the director of American Victims of Abortion. She regrets terminating her pregnancy in 1981.
Or maybe there are certain others involved for whom this is about something much filthier.
Hey there, welcome back to the show. This is Phil Vischer. You're listening to or watching the Phil Vischer podcast.
When Roe v. Wade was decided in 1973, the vast majority of evangelicals actually celebrated the decision. January 1976.
Yeah.
I was going to let that go, but yeah, that phrase is problematic as fuck. But anyway.
Again, still a Republican administration. At this point, it's Ford. The Ford administration makes a decision to revoke tax-exempt status from the first Christian school in the South because of its racial policy.
What school would that be?
Bob Jones University.
Why?
And Oral Roberts was not happy.
Because they would not admit black people.
Yeah.
We believe the narrative that the reason why evangelical Christians vote largely for Republicans was because of abortion.
Yeah.
That's not what started it. What started it was the desegregation of schools. And then eventually through political tactics, realizing, well, we need to get more Northerners. Then they fed the abortion issue into the equation. And that's what coalesced around the Republican Party. But if you go back 100 years or even less, you'll see that there were a lot of Christians engaged in a lot of what we would consider liberal, progressive social reform movements that we now associate with the Democratic Party.
So on that point, yes. However, there are still Christians who are progressive, who are on the side of women's rights, of body autonomy, of LBT, the LBT, sorry guys, LGBTQ community, migrants, that sort of thing. If you need any proof of that or any piece of evidence for that, look to the bishop who gave the convocation for Trump's second term. There are Christians who do that. There have been Christians who have done that forever. Those are the Christians I want to be. But they don't get a lot of press. Never have. because one of the things that the Bible tells us to be is humble. We are not, the left hand is not to know what the right hand is doing. We are not to stand on street corners and gnash our teeth and wear hair shirts and beat ourselves and show how righteous we are, either because of the sins that we have or have the sins that we've overcome or the things that we've been doing. The evangelical right, however, really seems to like to do that. They are very vocal about what they believe in, why they believe it's true, and why their activism is absolutely necessary. So the point that podcasts are made, that's really not it's not a revelation. That's always been there. But as a counterpoint, there have been racist, bigot fuckheads who identify as Christians also from the beginning. If you look at the Civil War, there were Christians on both sides of the issue of slavery, both of whom believed they were backed by the Word of God. They would use biblical references in support and in opposition to African American slavery in the United States. So this is not a, and this is the thing that I want atheists or anti-theists to understand. And one of the reasons why I fucking hate the term theist, because there is a plurality of thought within within faith communities. You can have Christians who are very progressive. And you can have Christians who aren't. You can have Christians who are much more authoritarian, much more in need of controlling, much more fascist, if you will. So to label someone, oh, theists believe this, go fuck yourself, kindly. Because that's painting people with a solid brush. And last time I checked, that's bigotry. So anyway, I just kind of want to call, let's see what Peter has to say on the subject.
When does personhood begin? In the final analysis, I don't know. The best Bible verses on that seem a bit imprecise. When does abortion become murder? I have no idea. And neither does this guy.
Every child is a precious and sacred gift from God. And as the Bible tells us, each person is wonderfully made.
I've said that if Ivanka weren't my daughter, perhaps I'd grab him by the...
I'll be known as the fertilization president, and that's all.
Some of us are apparently being exploited over and over for decades. They are playing good cop, bad cop. And when they finally gave us what they taught us to want,
Brett Kavanaugh's high school yearbook is under scrutiny today. On Kavanaugh's personal page, he calls himself a Renata alumnius.
What does the word alumnius mean in that context?
She was a great friend of ours. The media circus reported that it referred to sex. It did not.
In all, Renata is mentioned 14 times in the yearbook. You need a date and it's getting late, so don't hesitate to call Renata. She just found out that she's all over the yearbook and she's very upset. The insinuation is horrible, hurtful, and simply untrue, she told the New York Times.
No idea who this is.
By that time, I, the quintessential pro-life baby, felt sick to my stomach.
Overturned Roe versus Wade and ended a woman's constitutional right to an abortion.
Constitution does not confer the right to abortion.
Those around me danced for joy, oblivious that they were trampling on the grave of everything I ever loved about America.
Okay.
The land of opportunity, the Christian nation, the nation that didn't secure rights for some by removing rights from others, the nation whose faith wasn't a stench in the nostrils of the world.
My country
Okay. So you highlighted that the whole all men are created equal business, that if memory serves is not in the Constitution, that's in the Declaration of Independence, which I find to be a extremely hypocritical document given the person who wrote it. But the Constitution, as written, as it began, did not believe that all men were created equal. It clearly stated that was not, in fact, the case. Blacks were 3/5 of a person in relation to whites. So, what I would attribute that to, Peter, is again, we were fed a certain line when we were young, told America was great. It had no real flaws. It was the land of the free, land of the brave. And if you surround yourself with a whole bunch of white people, then it's very easy to see that because you don't see the racism. You don't see this the bigotry that is surrounding you because you're all the same person. You're all the same peoples. You all have the same characteristics. But once you get out of that bubble and you actually see what life is like for people who aren't white Christians or WASPs or what have you, then you start to understand that that ideal of America never existed. It didn't exist then, does not exist now. Whether it will ever exist, God only knows. My gut reaction is no. I don't know if that's because of the American ideal that I grew up with is impossible in that it is too idealistic for humanity to actually get right, or that the American people never really bought into that those were always pretty words that could be used to justify horrendous bullshit like slavery, like manifest destiny, or more recently, you know, while we weren't exactly the worst imperialist nation in the world or in history, we certainly contributed to imperialism around the world. So, at least social imperialism. So, and that's one of, and again, maybe I'm going off topic and I'm rambling and all that, but you know, that's what I am now have to truly face is, you know, I knew that the ideals of this country weren't true when they were written, that there was a pragmatic standpoint for why the founding fathers put forward the beliefs that they did. I mean, some of them on the face are legitimate. There was this belief in freedoms. There was this belief in being allowed to worship whomever you want, to say whatever it is you have to say, in order not be oppressed financially from a government that you have no say in. However, again, if you look a little bit deeper, women never came into this. So what the fuck was that about? There's one right there. What did I say first? Oh, you have the right to believe in whatever it is you want to believe in. In the unspoken, stage portion, so long as that was some version of Christianity. So, yeah, I don't think that ever existed. And so for me, what I have to come to grips with is I had to understand, or even after this, I still had faith that the dreams of the American public, the American dream, as it were, that these were ideals that we should strive towards, that these ideals were being looked at openly, without blinders, that when we say that rights are for all, we really mean rights are for all peoples without caveat. I believed that that was the majority of Americans. The majority of Americans had that notion of what America was and what America could be. Now, I'm not so certain. I'm not certain. I don't know if, as I said before, I don't know if this is a mask being lifted, that these feelings, these motivations, these oppressive natures, these frightened natures, if they were always there among the majority of Americans, and for whatever reason, there was a societal block. Someone was strong enough to put a block on voicing those, at least in public, that we hate the darkies. And now Trump or the right has managed to erode that barrier to the point that people are now free to express really racist shit without any kind of repercussion, professionally or socially. Or did the right drive America into that direction? Was I correct? Was that at some point in my lifetime were more Americans with the understanding that rights and laws should apply equilaterally, no asterisk, or not? So, and then they believe that, and then the woke media turn them into people who just openly hate. Not sure.
Is of the stronghold of slavery of the ice.
Maybe that America never quite existed outside my imagination, but all the same, instead of celebrate, I wanted to cry. That America is dead. And because they wouldn't let it go, it never got a proper funeral.
From every mountainside,
that's what this video is really about.
A proper funeral. Okay. I do appreciate that you are publicly renouncing the Trump administration, or at least it seems to be at this point, the Trump administration and anyone associated with the MAGA movement. I am glad to see that you are, again, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm glad to see that you are renouncing them, that you are in fact a strong believer, you are in fact a young earth creationist who does not align themselves with MAGA.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it too.
All right. So, guys, I will ask that no judgments. I haven't been emotional on this channel many times, and it's not our place to really judge what Peter's feelings are at this point. Whether he's being too dramatic or what have you. I have my own opinions on that, but I'll keep them to myself because again, I think that. So you don't need to apologize, Coco, or anyone else. I'm not asking for people to apologize, and I'm not reprimanding. I don't want to seem like I'm reprimanding people. All I'm asking for is a little bit of grace. Is just, we all react emotionally to different shit, and we all react emotionally. The amount of emotion that we have is different from one person to another.
Author of liberty, to thee we sing.
Tiles, I get what you mean here, but I hope they don't, because in the sense that I hope they don't have reason to, but I hear what you're saying, and I agree.
Soon may our land be bright with holy freedom's right. Protect us by thy might.
Nimrod, I mean, can we say they are crocodile tears? I mean, I know that I don't have the personal history with Peter that some of y'all have. Again, I'm not trying to reprimand you in any way. I just want to be clear that I'm against judgment in all its forms. I know I may not hold to that in my, I can be pretty fucking judgy, particularly when it comes to young Earth creationists. But I would, my core principle is that we don't judge people on the truthiness of how they present themselves, unless they. And again, this may be I was going to say unless they show themselves to be dishonest, but again, I don't know if I would go that route. Actually, I know I wouldn't go that route, because then that would mean that my actions were dictated by the actions of someone else, which I'm never going to give that kind of power to anyone, or at least not intentionally. So, yeah. Yeah. So, again, I just want to be fair and honest across the board. That, yeah, let's not accuse people of being dishonest. Just sort of, yeah. Let's just not accuse people of being dishonest. Let's just go that way. Although I have to say, I've probably accused a few people of being dishonest. Moving on.
I didn't just love my grandpa. I looked up to him. My last words
I thought my grandpa was an asshole, for what it's worth.
To him the night before he died were basically, knowing you has made me a better person. He has a legacy that I want to honor and uphold, and if I'm lucky, maybe even build on. The only chance I have of doing that is by remembering the lessons that he taught me and by striving to be the best person that I can be. The same is true.
I truly envy your relationship with your grandfather. I have made no secret that I do not have great relationships with my family, to the point that there's only one member of my family that I even speak to anymore. So I envy anyone who has that sort of connection with someone who is a blood relative. Because from my lived experience, this whole notion of blood is thicker than water, or whatever the fuck it is all bullshit. That family is what you make of it, not with what you're accidentally born into. That's my lived experience. So I truly envy people who have this sort of experience, where they have someone in their family that they can look up to and they can use as a example for how they want to live the rest of their life.
For our legacy of America, if we loved it, if we see a legacy that we respect and want to preserve, then we have to stop this macabre farce, but it's actually somehow still alive. You can't make it great again by force. Like it or not, you are a new America. And I'm asking you, please, for the sake of everything we loved, stop it. Stop hurting people. Stop destroying your legacy. Come back here, face the grave, and pay your respects. Learn the lessons. Think about the ideals that you claim to defend. Because unlike the body in the ground, those are only as dead as you let them be by forgetting them and wandering astray.
This goes back to what I was just talking about, is you're wanting to do this. Your messaging is predicated on the assumption that these people or a previous generation actually held to the ideals that you were taught as a kid. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if it's not true, but I don't know if it's true. I don't know whether or not people ever, as a whole, ever actually believed in those sorts of grand ideals. I'm becoming more cynical as I get older, in that I am becoming more and more of the mind that people as a whole are only motivated by one thing, and that is self-interest. Bye, Nimrod. Sorry you have to go out in the cold, burning rain, or the lovely cold rain. It's actually same here. I know it's not a hot take, but people are motivated by their own self-interest. But I think I'm getting to the point where that's a majority of this country. And when I say their own self-interest, really what I'm talking about is economically. Is that it seems to me that time and time again, what truly motivates change is economic dissatisfaction. I could be wrong. I'm not a historian. I haven't really done any sort of deep dive into this, but through my own experience, that's the messaging that I am getting from the American people throughout my lifetime, is that they're truly only, as a group, motivated to actual political action. I'm not talking about rallies. I'm not talking about riots. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about through the enacting of policy and through the lack of pushback when you have someone who is in blatant disregard of the law. This is motivated by pure economics. Are they in a good position economically? If they are in a good position economically, they are not going to want to change the status quo. Or if they do not have a burning desire to become better or have a larger standing economically, then they're not going to have a burning desire. They're willing to basically sit on the sidelines and not vote, or not be politically active in it in one way or the other. So this this notion that you have of trying to bring people back to these ideals, did our country ever really have these ideals to begin with? Or was it all lip service? I hope not. The last thing I want to say on that is we've been framing this in terms of America. I am an unapologetic globalist. I don't like the notion of nations. I think that nationalism is yet another form of fundamentalism, is that it's tribal, it's us, them. And given the difficulties that the human race is going to face in the next century, tribalism is literally going to kill us. It is going to destroy human species as a race, or at least it's going to reduce its numbers to a very, very small extent. So this goes beyond America. I mean, obviously, the two of us live in America. We have to deal with the politics that are around us, that sort of thing. We have to deal with the impact that has. But instead of phrasing it for myself, I would want to address issues specifically, and not some idealized version of a nation that may or may not have existed. So, to address things like liberty, to address things like a person's ability to choose their own bodily welfare. Those are issues that I think that need to be addressed in specific, and they don't need to be addressed in the context of America, because I believe this is universal. I think that anyone, regardless of what nationality they accidentally got born into, regardless of that, everyone has these particular rights. And so obviously in America, I can have more of a direct influence on how that is applied here. But I would leave off with going with, talking about the legacy of America, because that really makes me want to say America, because the underlying feeling, again, this is based on how I was raised, is this idea that America has a legacy. To me, is arrogance, is this idea that we are in some way morally superior to the rest of the world. We're not. There are things that we don't do well at all that European nations do very well, particularly in terms of seeing after their elderly and their sick. So the very concept of an American legacy, to me, does not sit well with me in any way whatsoever, because of the fact that does seem to be inherently arrogant and ultimately unchristlike. Really, what we should be concentrating on is not how we will be remembered or how we are seen, but what it is that we do and how it is we react to that. So yes.
What are those ideals? It's all through the history and symbology of our country. Patrick Henry, orator of the famous "Give me liberty or give me death" speech, once quoted Proverbs 14:34 saying, "Righteousness alone can exalt our people as a nation. Reader, whoever thou art, practice virtue and encourage it in others." Yes, there was hypocrisy even then. But if America didn't stand for this, then it didn't stand for anything. This is the only even remotely coherent system of conservative American values, and it ties back to what Jesus taught as the two greatest commandments: love God and love others. Loving others might often be difficult to do, but it's not difficult to comprehend. It's almost the simplest idea in the world. consider their needs and desires, and if possible, help care for them. Just be friendly. Be nice.
Okay, that last sentence, I'll probably revisit that. As I very much stressed in my last video, there is a extremely wide gulf between nice and polite. It reminds me of something that I saw on Facebook with Toon. That some guy that he's feuding with sent him an unsolicited DM that was, called him a fuckwit, said a whole bunch of, he swore almost as profusely as I do. And Toon's sort of the characterization of that was, his potty mouth, the crap that is coming out of his mouth. I don't understand this idea that swear words in themselves are trash. But when you insult people's intelligence, when you insult people's personalities or whatever, that's okay so long as you don't call them a fuckwit. So there is a huge difference between nice and polite. So I want to be clear that I agree that we should be nice in these conversations. That does not mean we only be polite, that we somehow only just comport ourselves in a certain decorum that we feel to be socially acceptable without actually considering the weight of our words and the impact they might have on others. That is being nice. That is being polite. Being nice is realizing what we are saying and how that is going to affect the people around us. Now, we have no power as to how they're going to take that. When I say something, I put it out in the world. I have no power as to how those words are going to be received. That's different from responsibility, which I really won't get into here, but I don't have the power to make them react one way or the other. But I need to be cognizant that my words can be interpreted negatively and they could cause harm. And so I need to consider that and I need to act accordingly. That, in my opinion, is being nice. You can be nice and not be polite. Probably not so nice. Ideally, you'd like to be both. But if I had to be one or the other, I sure as shit I'm going to be nice and not polite. And I think there's an argument to be said that at some point, politeness can go fuck itself. You are making the claim that I've heard many times that we're founded as a Christian nation. That is objectively false. It is well established that most of the founding fathers were deists. They were Christians. They believed in a watchmaker God that created the universe, put it in motion, and then sat back and watched. These were not what you might consider to be fervent religious folks today. Sure, they were church going. Sure, they would talk about in God we trust, but that was societal. That was not something that was born out of faith. That was born out of civic duty, because these people are coming from a society that believed in divine right of kings. And so the English monarchy, the English government, has deep-rooted connections to religion. And so the idea that they could divorce themselves of that, even if they wanted to, is, in my mind, naive. religion is often used and has often been used as a way to give authority to a certain perspective. Don't take my word for it. You need to cede all of your lands to me, not because I want to kick you out of Colorado, but because God wants your red ass to be kicked out of Ohio or out of Colorado. It is easier to get people to follow your flag if you can point to something greater, to something higher, to motivate them to move in that direction. And so I think you need to disabuse yourself of the idea that this country was ever a Christian nation, because no Christian nation would ever, now I am talking about those two commandments that you pointed out. If we are talking about Christians who are focused on those two commandments, there would never be a Christian nation or a nation founded where slavery existed. This is not some sort of paying off your debt slavery, this sort of romanticized sort of slavery that you see in the show Vikings or in Rome or what have you, where you have slaves, they're treated well, they're even listened to and maybe prized for their wisdom. No, this was African American slavery. These people were forced into brutal physical labor. They were ripped, their families were ripped apart. They were beaten and murdered on the whims of their masters. There is no conscionable way to state that a Christian nation would have allowed that institution would continue to exist. Therefore, no, I fervently reject your proposition that we were ever a Christian nation. Even in theory, yes, we have in God we trust on our money. We swear things on the Bible. But again, I point to that being a societal issue, or that is a tradition. That is not a religious preference. We swear on the Bible because, well, that's what we're taught to do. We don't swear on the Bible because we want to make sure that you know that I am truthful, because if I am not truthful, I am offending God. Although it's interesting, there is a passage in Matthew that actually says swearing on the Bible is no bueno. But that's beside the point. So, yeah, if any Christian subscribes to the idea that there are really only two commandments that need to be addressed or need to be followed explicitly, love God and love his creation and everything in it, then there is no way that a Christian can honestly say that they created a Christian nation and consider themselves to be a founding father. It's not possible.
Any child knows how to do this. What if someone doesn't share your God and they want something that you think displeases him? So you feel like you have to choose either love God or love others. Can you just push your beliefs on them as a sort of tough love? Well, not if it ruins the relationship and makes them curse him. What if the one and only thing they want is for you to respect their religion or non-religion enough to shut up about yours and not legislate it? What if they've come to find your beliefs so offensive that there's no way you can say a word without burning the bridge? What if love is the only language you can use that they would understand at all? There's a
Here. Agree with all of that. Let's see where you go with it.
saying now, there's no hate like Christian love. Okay, that stings, but don't swat it away. Let it sink in. We are destroying them. And don't give me that it's because they hate God crap. That's not what Scripture's talking about when it says they are enemies of God. It's possible to earn their trust back enough to share a word here and there. Yes, it's hard. It takes radical prudence, radical empathy, radical patience, and radical humility. It takes realizing that our job isn't to fix them. Our first job is to fix us.
Correct. I would actually revise that our only job is to fix us. We are responsible for our own actions and no one else's, in that it is up to us individually to build the kingdom of heaven. It is not for us to force anyone or entice anyone or logic anyone into, convince anyone into building that with us or for us. That is on us as individuals. So yes, I am very glad to hear that you do not support the legislation of morality onto the general public. But I am going to have questions about that at the end. I'm going to go back. You put up a couple of newspaper headings or headlines. I don't know where you did that. When you mentioned legislating morality. Okay, love. That is
For
a good one. I
God,
mean,
and they want something that you think displeases him. So you feel like you have to choose either love God or love others. Can you just push your beliefs on them as a sort of tough love? Well, not if it ruins the relationship and makes them curse him. What if the one and only thing they want is for you to respect their religion or non-religion enough to shut up about yours and not it sink in? You know, there's a saying now, Tiv, that there's no way you can say a word without burning the bridge.
all right.
What
I did see that you're one of the, just in that snippet, I did see that one of the headlines did involve the trans community. So I'm glad of that.
if love is the only language you can use that they would understand at all? You know, there's a saying now, there's no hate like Christian love. Okay, that stings, but don't swat it away. Let it sink in. We are destroying them. And don't give me that it's because they hate God crap. That's not what Scripture's talking about when it says they are enemies of God. It's possible to earn their trust back enough to share a word here and there. Yes, it's hard. It takes radical prudence, radical empathy, radical patience, and radical humility. It takes realizing that our job isn't to fix them. Our first job is to fix us. In Matthew 5:16, when Christ said, "Let your light shine," he didn't really mean, "Show them how awesome you are." We're a mess. That's not impressive to the world. The phrase "your light" refers to him, our commitment to growing more in Jesus Christ every day, because we're not completely like him. It takes visible progress in our lives toward a goal that's beyond ourselves, that's unattainable yet irresistible, to draw their eye off of us and toward heaven. That's what it takes to make an unbeliever voluntarily glorify a God they don't even believe in.
Well, the more than civil you've been, I feel like you've been very respectful. I think very much to the credit of your religion.
You want to see that happen?
Couple things. I would not have shown that clip and highlighted that Tony was praising you as a credit to your religion. I understand why you would be motivated to do that. You want to give evidence to what you're saying. Again, that seems to self-promotion to me. But here is my issue with on the face, I am agreeing with almost everything you're saying here, in that you cannot force someone to love God. You cannot cajole them to love God. But I want to be able to articulate this well. I'm still getting the feeling from you, and I get this feeling specifically from evangelicals, of an us versus them mentality. There is us, we are right. There's them, they are wrong. In that, there is implicit judgment. And that, I believe, is ultimately the pride before the fall. I agree with you. And this is how I've said it, not as well as you have. But when I am the light, I wish to walk in the steps of Christ. I wish to be as Christ-like as I possibly can, or at least that give the intention of being so. And so other people can see it, and other people can see the fruits of my labors and say, hey, I want me a piece of that. I want to emulate that sort of behavior. That's what I want to do, because I can see that it will, that it provides good, that it spreads good and mitigates evil. Because as I've said, I'm a pragmatist. You know, pseudoscience people will say that, oh, because we can't properly explain the creation of the universe, therefore science can't be believed, it's broken, it can't be used, so forth and so on. That our current understanding of science is no longer valid because it can't answer every single question. My response to that has been and always will be, if I can use it and it gets me to the right answer, and by that I mean I can predict something that's going to happen, or I see something that is happening and I can attribute and I can figure out, okay, if I have this physics, it would give me what I'm seeing. If it works, I'm going to use it, even if it isn't perfect. Where I'm getting to this is, again, I don't give a shit if people are saved. I said that because I know that's going to be eminently quotable or clippable. What I mean to say with that is that it is not my responsibility to determine if someone is saved. I don't know what being saved is. I don't know if I'm saved. So I sure as shit I'm not going to be able to know if someone else is saved. I'm not going to know how to get them to be saved. Like, what do I need to, they're doing this, and so you need to do this other thing because you won't get into heaven that way. We don't know. We have the example of Christ to work with. We have his example, we have his teachings, and then we have the rest of the Bible as the prophecy in which he fulfills. That's all we have. And we have faith that by following this blueprint, by following his example and leading a life similar to his, as similar to his as we possibly can, that we will win favor, we will please God, and we will have the privilege to live with him in true proximity for the end of time. Who wouldn't want to be with someone for the end of time that you love deeply? That's the reward. That's my reward, is that I get to spend the rest of eternity with a being that I deeply love. That's it. Mansions, chicks playing harps or doing ASMR on clouds, whatever. I don't care. So long as I'm with God for the rest of my life or the rest of existence, I don't give a fuck what the rest of heaven looks like. And I question anyone who does. I question anyone who's like, oh yeah, I'm going to get a huge fucking mansion up in heaven. It's going to be great. Because that's material reward. That's material reward. Again, that's something that Christ has told us to shy away from. But getting back to the point that I'm trying to make badly is, again, I'm hearing a lot of us and them. I hear what you're saying, and I'm glad you're saying it. I'm glad that you are denouncing the pridefulness of telling people how they should live, and particularly those people who feel that they need to legislate it. But again, when I was talking about, but it comes back to what I was talking about with America. America, fuck yeah. Pew, 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 pew. Is that, for me, goes beyond America. This goes beyond. This goes to simply just what is right, what is wrong, what is going to mitigate suffering, what is going to bring joy, and take the issues themselves into account, as opposed to, is it the right way for America to be? So so I would ask for you to ask the question, what is my ultimate goal? What do I actually want them to do? Do I want them to be Christ-like, or do I want them to be Christians? Do I want them to be good people, or do I want them to be Americans who act in the way that I believe Americans should act? Because in both cases, I strongly suggest it be the former.
Learn the pronouns. Bake the wedding cakes. Vote for their equality and inclusion. Let them have romantic movie scenes. You can always look away. Normalizing their worldview doesn't hurt you. You're not going to save the movie's soul from hell. In their minds, there's no difference between affirming their worldview and affirming their humanity, right? So if you set your objections to their worldview out front as a blockade to affirming their humanity, then in a way, aren't you tacitly agreeing with that conflation? Oh, you never thought of it that way, did you? The gift.
Let me back that up.
Well, I feel like you've been very respectful. I think very much to the credit of your religion.
You want to see that happen? Learn the pronouns. Bake the wedding cakes. Vote for their equality and inclusion. Let them have romantic movie scenes. You can always look away. Normalizing their worldview doesn't hurt you. You're not going to save the movie's soul from hell. In their minds, there's no difference between affirming their worldview and affirming their humanity, right? So if you set your objections to their worldview out front as a blockade to affirming their humanity, then in a way, aren't you tacitly agreeing with that conflation? Oh.
So, again, I don't want to misrepresent what you're saying, but I can tell this is what I'm hearing. Again, there's a lot of us and them language here. There is learn their pronouns, bake their cakes, let them have romantic scenes in movies. Como say what? Let them? Let them? That's a bit fucked. Because what I hear from that is that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you don't agree with the LGBTQ worldview. Insofar as that you believe that it is, let me try to rephrase that. You are, yeah, that you don't allowing anyone to get married, allowing anyone to experience the joy and wondrous nature that is divorce, that is the right thing to do. It's not a concession. This is not a, oh, if we let them have their scenes in their movies, they will be more amenable to coming to our way of thinking. That's what I'm hearing. I'll get to that in a second, Peter. Oh, I need to give, don't push that over. I'll get you water in a second. Don't do it. Don't choose violence. Okay. Hold on a second. All right, try that for a second. And yes, my cats drink out of Solo cups because at my house, it's always a party baby. And so therefore, we all drink out of Solo cups. But anyway, yeah, I'll get to the target audience in a second. But this is what I'm hearing, and I think this is what anyone else would hear as well, particularly anyone within that community, is that this sounds a whole lot like a bait and switch. You believe their ideas or their worldview is wrong, that being trans, being homosexual, that is actually against God. But we should normalize or allow their worldview to be normalized so that their knee-jerk hatred of Christianity goes away, so they become more amenable to being told that their lifestyle and their worldview is in fact wrong. So that's what I'm hearing. I don't know if that's what your that is your intent, if that was your meaning, but that's what I'm hearing, and I will almost guarantee you that any friend of mine who hears this, that is of those communities, is probably going to hear the same thing. Peter, that very well may not be your intent, but honestly, I think that if you want to quote unquote normalize these worldviews, you need to say that they are valid. You need to state that, okay, you like dick, you have a dick, you like dick. That's cool. God doesn't have a problem with that. So long as you love each other and don't use each other like a piece of shit. Like anyone else. You got a hoo-ha? You love munching on hoo-has? Great. Go nuts with those cronuts. You're loved. God loves you. I love you. It doesn't matter. If you want to normalize their worldview, as you say, that is the kind of thing, that is the statements that need to be made from the Christian community. And it needs to be said loud and fucking proud. I am Christian and I support these communities. I am Christian. I support those that are marginalized because we are all human and God loves all of us. We are all God's creation and he loves all of us. And we are all trying to get through this, life as best we can. We have hurdles that we need to overcome that are personal to us, but we are trying to get through this the best we can. Now, obviously, I think the best way through is through God. I think the best way through is through a Christ-like existence. I think that is the best way to get over these hurdles and get to where you want to go. I don't know. I do not have the pride to say, if you do not live in how I envision a Christ-like life to be, that God will somehow punish you in eternal damnation. Because ultimately it comes down to this, is that any flavor of Christianity is deeply personal. Even within a more monolithic community like evangelical Christians, each evangelical Christian is going to have a certain interpretation of the Bible, a certain interpretation of what is and is not right, that is personal to them. There are limits to what they will allow and what they won't allow that are going to be different for every individual person. So it is, to me, morally wrong for us to have the audacity to state that I am correct, that my interpretation of the Bible, my interpretation of what a good life is the right choice. Because then that means that my determination of morality is absolute. It is perfect. And I cannot be perfect because I am not God. I am not Christ. And so I cannot hold others to a standard that that is not perfect. And this is the problem I have with literal interpretation of the Bible, is that the literal interpretation of the Bible, or those who espouse that the Bible can interpret it literally, state that essentially it has a single message. There is no misinterpreting it. There is simply one teaching to be gotten out of it. And that is that is just simply not true. Sorry, I was looking at the chat, so I'm losing my train of thought, which is unfortunate. So I feel that God wants the world to be a joyous place. I want the world to be a joyous place. And for me, and for my interpretation of the Bible and my relationship with Christ, I feel that anyone's identity is valid, is right, and cannot be infringed upon by anyone else. It cannot be judged by anyone else. What can be judged are actions, insofar as how they affect everyone, people around them. Because ultimately, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again, probably many times, is that the whole point is not to get into heaven. The whole point is to make heaven on earth. Is that attempt? That is how we show love to God. That is how we show love to everyone else, is that we take active steps to make the world a happy, joyous place. And that is where I think theology comes into it, is trying to understand from the Bible what that really means. Because the Bible cannot be taken literally. One, for practical reasons, it was not written by the same dude. It was not written in the same language. The Bible that you and I read is in none of the languages it was originally written in. Its construction was made up by a whole bunch of white dudes around 200 AD or so. And then it got changed by a couple other white dudes later on down the line. A couple of the books got thrown out. A couple, 3 books got thrown out. I still don't know what Maccabee did to the Protestants, but apparently it was a thing. So, so from a practical standpoint, I don't see how you could possibly take the Bible as the literal word of God, because there are many contradictions in the Bible. I know I've stated the whole angels thing. You've come back. You have attempted to say that these are different, basically, instances that essentially when John showed up, or whoever, they saw 2 angels, and then when Mark showed up, that would be true if this were an eyewitness account, or I might buy that argument if this was an eyewitness account. They're not. This is supposedly the divine word as translated to them from God onto the page. Because if it's the literal word of God, then that's how it has to happen, is that God is literally whispering into their ear, telling them exactly what to put on the page. And so the fact that the Gospels are not consistent in simply the number of angels that are present is not, I cannot reconcile that with a divine literal writing. Not to mention, from a theological standpoint, what the people did when they saw them. Some of them ran in terror, and others actually sat and listened to what they had to say. Those are theological lessons that seem to be counter on the face of them. So yeah, and yeah, now I've completely lost track of what I was, where I was going with that. Judy, briefly, that is interesting. Briefly define evangelical Christian. So, when I say the term evangelical Christian, what I'm meaning is someone who takes a literal interpretation of the Bible, believes that there is a single right way to salvation, and that they have the right to determine whether or not someone else is following that path. So the 2 things that I would, for my definition of evangelical, the 2 critical aspects, or rather the 2 things that I most disagree with, is a literal interpretation of the Word of God. I don't believe that that's appropriate or even possible. And the knowledge, the foreknowledge of what is the path of salvation. And then on top of that, kind of tied to that, I say a third distinguishing feature is that you feel the necessity to push that view of salvation onto everyone else. That you have this, I'm going to heaven because I loves me some God, and you are going to hell because you loves you some fornicating. Then that is kind of my definition of that. So, by that definition, I am not an evangelical. If I claim that you were, I apologize. I don't really know you. I'm surprised by this video. I am surprised that you have come out and are denouncing the legislation of morality. I'm very interested now to hear what you have to say about Will Duffy's position, or Will Duffy's actions with the Colorado state government, where he is very much in favor and has advocated for the legislation of the abolition of abortion. So I know that you are a fan, or that you have respect for Will Duffy. So if that is the case, I am curious to know what your thoughts are on the fact that he seems to be doing the one thing, or one of the things that you are denouncing in this video. Which brings me to the targeting of this video. If your message is to truly denounce MAGA, you need to change that title. Because when I saw that, when I hear of words like America's dying legacy, that's MAGA speak. Those are dog whistles. That's a dog whistle for what's dying is white privilege. America was made for men, made for white men, and that's it. Okay, fine, let the women in. They can put shoes on. Fuck it, they can vote. That way, maybe I can get some sex. I don't know. But ultimately in their heart, that's as far as they're going to go with it. So when I hear America's dying legacy, to me, that's a dog whistle of someone trying to go the route of, we need to get back to our conservative roots. We need to get back to those, the great time of America. Hence the whole MAGA thing. Yeah. So sorry, I just saw that you didn't know, you're saying you didn't know about his anti-choice activism. Let's see. I am just learning how extreme he is on that, and I have yet to hear his reaction to my video. My question to you is he going to watch this? Do you know if he's seen it? You didn't tag him in it. You tagged me in it, which, great, thank you. I did enjoy it, or I did enjoy the video, and I'm going to finish it off. Like, we got 5 minutes left. But if you want to denounce people, if you want your message to get out there, you need to be explicit in who you're targeting with it. You need to say that, like I would say, MAGA is killing America's legacy. And if you wanted to be frank about it, I still wouldn't agree with that, because as I've said, I find the term American legacy to be problematic. But this is going to make people believe that you are in fact pro. I would think that title is going to make people assume that you are actually for MAGA, because that's basically MAGA speak, talking about America's dying legacy. So if you really want this to get out there, if you really want to get this seen by other young earth creationists, other evangelicals, not saying you are, but if you want this seen by other young earth creationists, by evangelicals, then you need the title to reflect it. And I would make a follow-up video, and I would be very explicit in who you are actually calling out. Because I don't know if you actually use the term MAGA or Trump or the current administration. You allude to them. You show images of Trump. You show a dude in a red hat. But is that enough? So, yeah, that would be my advice to you, is that if you truly want to go down this route, if you truly want to bring this sort of attention, these sorts of notions to the evangelical community, to young earth creationists, then you need to be more explicit about your messaging. So, all right, let's see. Let me finish this off, and then we can talk about that last comment.
You never thought of it that way, did you? The gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable. Romans 11:29. God made that person with beauty and dignity. Did you think that by devoting themselves to things that we might call sin, they were capable on this earth of destroying that gift to such a degree that you're off the hook for honoring it? Then, Christian, you got some growing to do. And we better get used to this. In this country, the sun is way down on Christian dominance by any pure and innocent means, if there ever was such a thing. We have a growing population of neighbors. Atheists, agnostics, Jews, Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, Yoruba, pagan, Wiccan, and yes, side A Christians and the LGBTQ crowd with all of its supporters. Do you remember how Jesus had to treat neighbors? Okay, maybe you have kids that you're afraid might see a drag queen story time or a gay kiss in a Disney movie. Listen, one way or another, they will find out that gay and trans people exist. You sheltering them from that sense of normal means that you're afraid they won't choose gospel truth on its own merits. You're basically teaching them that the gospel needs a bit of spitshine from outgroup phobia. And then you wonder why there's a mass exodus of them leaving the church. Here's an alternative.
Is someone who participates in drag, do they have a valid worldview, in the sense that if they participate in such an activity, they have the potential to be saved? And what I mean by that is, if someone lives as a drag queen or drag king for the rest of their lives and is fully invested in that worldview, do you believe that they can be saved? That would be my question to you. Do you believe that someone who is gay, who performs homosexual acts, is deeply devoted to that lifestyle, whatever that lifestyle happens to be, can they be saved? Because the answer to those two questions is yes. It's going to help if you are more explicit in stating that. Because again, you don't say that. What you're arguing here is that, if I'm looking at this correctly, is that, all right, I'm going to come back to that statement in a second. Again, it's unfair, but I've heard this from evangelicals that I've met, and it may mean something way different from them than it is to you. Your argument here seems to be that you should not object to these things because if you do so, you are turning people off from the Word of God. Whereas my statement is, or my position is, you should not reject these things because they are not evil. They are not in themselves evil things. So, not by giving it up, just by loving Jesus. Okay. All right. I mean, again, this is a voice to text conversation, so I don't want to get too far into it, but because obviously I'm not going to pick up on the nuance that you're putting down. So I don't want to misinterpret what you have to say, but so yeah. All right. Okay. So you don't believe, you are of the opinion that someone who is gay, has loving gay sex for the rest of their lives, they can potentially, they have just as good a job or chance or whatever of getting into heaven as anyone else.
When your kids see that drag queen or that gay kiss, you say, good, and use it as an opportunity to teach them what it means to respect and make room for different beliefs and different ideas of normal. The fields are white for harvest, and kids can help. Kids are amazing. They might.
Why not teach them that those things are not wrong? I mean, I agree. The children should be taught that there are different worldviews, there are different belief systems out there. But what I think they should be, the more important messaging is those beliefs are not, we have no right to claim absolutely that those beliefs are wrong, that those beliefs are evil. So why not teach children to not just be tolerant of other belief systems, but to be accepting of them, and more importantly, not to judge someone on whatever kind of lifestyle that they have, whatever kind of identity that they have. So shouldn't that be the message that we want to get out there?
Might even be quicker than you to grasp the true mind of Christ in a pagan society. But the bigger question here is, what are you going to do with the legacy of America? I'm just one person. Change happens when we all move at once because of things we have in common. And there are those who think that it's not too late. That in spite of everything, we all still share that capacity to reach for greatness. Not a forced, selfish greatness, but a greatness that was passed to us through generations. A greatness that was and is bigger than every generation. A greatness that we're not worthy of, but that we're blessed to reach for anyway. A new greatness that we share with more people, many of whom are all too ready to forgive the past, if only we will contemplate and grieve the loss and pay attention to the legacy moving forward.
Not a good show.
Will you do that? Can enough of you do that to turn things around? I don't know. Right now, it feels like we're diving into an abyss, but I want to hope. Let's at least give it a try. Shall we?
Okay. Check out the comments. Let's see. Mom just messaged me. Mild correction. Did not actually serve in Camp Irwin during World War II, but shortly after, 50s or so. Camp Irwin. All right. Powerful than everything I've seen. Thank you for making it. Awesome. I used to think my anger about this was just me being stupid. It's reasonable, or it's fight or flight. Not entirely certain what they mean by that comment. You're engaging speaker, and I really appreciate how authentic and true to yourself you are. The kind of openness is rare and refreshing. Our views are different, but I find it genuinely interesting to hear your perspective. It's always good to see someone express themselves with that kind of honesty. Generally refreshing. Face value, honestly, I'm not the only emotional unicorn. Okay. Very good, heartfelt, even passionate video. This really means a lot. I commend you for recognizing a lot of this started with racism and is still absolutely steeped in racism and outward religious bigotry. There's something you'll almost never see in the usual media, is that they talk about Christian nationalism and the white supremacy movements, but almost never about white Christian nationalism, despite the massive overlap between the two. I'm not going to keep going on that, but I don't know what news outlets they are watching, but I think it's pretty well established in the media that I watch that it's white Christian nationalism. That Christian nationalism is basically synonymous with white supremacy. So I don't know what's going on with that. And it wouldn't be me if I didn't mention, have to remind the Christian faith is quite clear about the worth of those who don't believe and also don't believe in the right God. You're quite right. Scripture is ambiguous to the point of incoherency, if you ask me. Jesus' words condemn him as he insists that those who don't believe deserve condemnation. Okay. One last thing, you seem a bit torn about personhood. When the very simple answer is that it is a question that has no answer. That's some bullshit. I refuse to accept that. There is an answer to when personhood begins. You might be able to make the question or make the argument that there is no way we can know that answer. I still find that a cop-out. And so therefore, yeah, I'm pretty sure that once we get a handle on what the hell consciousness is from a scientific point of view, we can answer the question of personhood. Because to me, that's what personhood is when is a consciousness formed. If I were to get metaphysical, that is what I believe the soul has been imparted into the life or into the body, is when consciousness and when something becomes conscious, self-aware, that is when the soul is there. That is when it becomes a person. So, yeah, with a name like Mechatheist, yeah, I figured he was an atheist. And I'm not surprised that he's full of shit. America has lost the plot. Yeah. Clown show. Apparently this person didn't like it. Were you a theater kid? Oh, you're not a theater kid. Okay. I thought it was a great video, a lot of effort. Sounded like if you try to win them all, you look compromised. Christianity just doesn't leave room for doing whatever being okay. There's a pattern here of people rejecting God because it's not perfect in their ideal. I have to remind myself that no one deserves what Jesus did for them. They don't even deserve whatever olive branch they think God needs to offer them. Would you call for Jesus to be crucified simply because he's not what you expect? It's designed that you have to drop everything to find him. So all you have to build the field. If you think the tenets of Christianity are holding them back from doing as they please, so be it. We aren't a bridge for them except individually. You become like them in order to win them. But if we all go this way, the Muslims, who are our foil, have no bridge. Apparently, already we seem to them like we spread corruption all over the world. I'm curious on how you respond to this, because this is some grade A horseshit right here. Grade A evangelical Christianity right here. If we go this way, the Muslims, who are our foil, have no bridge. Lovely taste of Islamophobia for no fucking reason. Why that had to be put in there, I have no idea. But sure. For some reason, it doesn't seem to be loading. All right, you say here, 1 Corinthians, I have become all things to all people. By all means, I might say, by all means, I might save some. Religion is pure, undefiled before God the Father. Is to visit orphans and widows in their affliction and to keep oneself unstained from the world. You say that we become like them, but that's not a bad thing as long as we are unstained by the world. We are not called to fix society, only to make disciples. Again, and I understand this argument because I've encountered it many, many times before, is that effectively he's saying that if you allow gays to do gay things, then, what else are you allowing? Like, basically, you don't have to actually be or do anything. Oh, what time is it? Fuck, 6 a.m. Christ, I gotta teach soonish. So, if you do gay thing, if you allow gays to do their thing, then, everything is meaningless because you can allow anyone to do everything. Yeah. I don't have the time to dissect that right now, but I find that to be a fundamentalist argument. Again, I find it to be in the vein of, because it doesn't do this one thing, the whole thing is invalid. But again, the problem with this is, one, the not so subtle bigotry in it, but also, again, it's us versus them. The us versus them mentality, the underlying principle of us versus them is that us is right, them is wrong, us is good, them is evil. It is the us versus them mentality that needs to be challenged. And I don't really see you doing that here. There's no church except the individuals. Sure. Just wouldn't do miracles in places with no faithful. What? Either because it's wrong or he couldn't, but both are the same in the end. Faith is the certainty of what is hoped for, so it is the basis for whatever you think a good God is in charge. Faith by its very nature is not certainty. I don't know what he means by faith, or what his definition of faith is. Obviously, it's more different than mine. Faith is doing what is right without certainty, without the promise that you will be rewarded for the actions that you do. You do the thing not because you have certainty of reward. You do something because it is the right thing to do. You do something because it will bring joy into the world and mitigate evil. Okay, so yeah, all right. So yeah. It's 6 a.m, guys. You'll have to forgive me on that. Okay. Again, this video brought to you by Buffalo Bill's Body Lotion, established 1991. It puts the lotion on its skin, or it looks really wrinkly and old. And you can't make people suits out of wrinkly old skin. Spoiler alert. Yeah, of course, Peter. That's the least I can do. And like I said, I have wicked insomnia, and I need to do something rather than just sit in bed staring at the ceiling. So I decided to do this. But as it is 6 a.m, I'm going to have to figure out some way of doing something, because I have to teach in like 5 hours, which does seem like a while from now, but it's not enough time to get good sleep, but it's too far for me to just stay up and work through it. So I am confronted with bad choices. First world bad choices, but bad choices around the end. Be sure to give the cat some water. Actually, Judy, I need some water. I gave them my water. Are you appreciative that I gave you water? That I gave you my water? Huh? Does she look like she appreciates it? I don't think she does. All right. That's just nuts. All right. So, yeah, I think that's basically it for me. Peter, thank you for sharing your thoughts with me. Like I said, I hope you found my criticism, as it were, to be constructive. Again, I am pleased that you are at least pushing back on the notion that that morality should not be legislated. I, again, would love to know if you have conversations with Will Duffy and some folks similar to him, if you would call them out and do so publicly about advocating for the legislation of morality, because they need to be held accountable for their actions. And in that sense, one of the reasons why this was not brought up is because people are so in love with him because of the whole TFE thing that they didn't look at anything else. It seems to me they didn't look at anything else the man believed in or the man believes in. And so I would be curious to know whether or not you will talk to him and actually have a conversation with him about it. I hope you get a reaction from Duffy. I'm not entirely certain you will. Like, he has stated that he is going to turn his content away from flat Earth and into creationism, more towards how the Big Bang Theory is a non-starter for him, how the Earth has to be 10,000 years old, that sort of thing. I haven't been keeping much on it because my eye has been on Answers in Genesis, but we'll see. I will be interested in seeing what that's going to be. All right, folks. Yeah, I am, as always, Professor Parks, PhD, and I make content on astronomy, mental health, and science skepticism. If you like that sort of thing, please hit that like button, share, subscribe, do all that sort of nonsense. Hit that bell for notifications, but since I don't post in any kind of regular motion, or maybe that, yeah, you need to get notified, because if you don't get notified, I don't post regularly. So you will probably miss one or two of these things, if that matters. If you would like to, my day job is director of the observatory at George Mason University, particularly given the current environment. Any help that you could give us at the observatory would be appreciated, and you can do that either through PayPal or through Patreon. If you'd like to help me pursue this more as a second career or what have you, or if you just like me and like to give me money, then please feel free to super chat or become a channel member or what have you. If you become a channel member, I will be putting out more videos that are in line with talking about the Landalt mission, which is a NASA mission that was awarded to Dr. Peter Plavchan a while ago. I haven't really been making videos on that because we are legitimately in limbo at this point. It was just a pass back, whatever the hell that is. Basically, from what I'm getting, is there's an initial proposal, initial budget proposal that the government is pushing for that is calling for a 20% cut in overall NASA funding and a 50% cut in research funding. So if that were to go through as written, the Nancy Roman Space Telescope, which is built and is preparing for launch, would get cut. Basically, the mission would end. Even though we have a functioning telescope, they would still cut it. But what's more worrisome is that the Landau mission is in the same vein or same type of project called a discovery mission. This is a inexpensive mission, only a few tens of millions of dollars as opposed to tens of billions. These missions have very specific goals and can be done inexpensively, relatively speaking. The one that is furthest in development, or at least I think is the furthest in development, which is Da Vinci. That is a probe that is going to be set to Venus, which we desperately need. That would also get cut. So if Da Vinci is getting cut, the chances of Landau being cut, I fear, are pretty fucking high. But there's a lot of ifs there. If that budget proposal doesn't change, if that budget proposal gets passed as is, and then if they decide to actually cut Landau, there's a lot of ifs. But it's been it's been a thing, which is one of the reasons why I haven't. Howdy, Maya. Have I been up for 2 hours? Psh, no. I've been up way longer than that. Yeah, I started this because I couldn't sleep. So, yeah, it's fun. It's great. Yum, yum, yum. What are you doing up at 6? Oh, you got a 9 to 5 job. You've got one of them corporate jobs. Itch. Sorry. Because nobody should be up in America at 6 in the morning, Eastern Standard Time. That's ungodly. I think that's in the Bible somewhere. Is low on to those who get up early, your life sucks. I think that's in Luke, maybe. I don't know. You'll definitely want to watch on on double speed because, like I said, I've been rambling for about 3 hours now. But anyway, oh, if you like me preaching, I think I get pretty preachy in this one. Yeah. Anyway, so help out the observatory, Patreon, PayPal. If you want to help me out specifically, become a channel member or PayPal. Any monies that I get from PayPal and Patreon go immediately or go directly to the observatory to build or to buy fun things like focus masks and telescope covers and things like that. One exciting piece of news that I can tell you, and it is also topical, is that I may have mentioned, but I got money to achieve my goal of having 6 telescopes that are identical, plus identical cameras, plus identical laptops to control all of that. I have in my head, in the dark recesses of my mind, I have this diabolical plot to create a remote observatory that can be utilized by various communities. I haven't quite worked out how. I'm thinking that it would be used partly for research, exoplanet research, but the other half would be to allow school districts that don't have the resources to have that resource to actually be able to collect science data and to analyze it. This would primarily be for high schools. I don't think that Thomas Jefferson High School should be the only recipient of really cool shit. So anyway, I got that money. Two problems. One, my first 2 telescopes were Meade telescopes. Meade went out of business. Did not know about that until I tried to buy another Meade. But Meade went out of business back in summer of 2024. But also, Celestron, which is the company I'm going next to, is lo and behold made in China, or at least parts of it are made in China. And you can't get them now, apparently. Or the finance person I am in contact with to get all this done, she was saying it would be problematic to get those Celestrons because of the whole China mess. So I'm hoping that we can get telescopes purchased that are currently in stock. that do not have any kind of tariff thing. So, yeah, I can now say that I have personally been affected by Trump's economic bullshit, aside from my retirement. So, yeah. Anyway, more on that later. Like I said, I gotta go. Love y'all. Thanks for being here through all this. And Maya, I really hope that you enjoy the stream when you watch it. And yeah, I would love to be on your show with Dr. Kip at some point if you would think that would be fun and entertaining. All right. Peace out. Luna just peaced out. Peace out and clear skies.